My name is Trew. I'm a Middle East correspondent for the Times newspaper in London. And I was until February based in Egypt, covering the region. So I cover mainly North Africa and the Gulf. But there's countries that I do the most would be Egypt, countries like Libya, Tunisia, also the West Bank and Gaza. So those are the main ones that I cover from the ground. But I also do a lot of work on the Gulf, including countries like Yemen, although it's very hard to obviously get into Yemen. It depends which country you're talking about. In Egypt, obviously, there is a state, a very strong state. Some would say a security state. And so the way that you end up facing that in terms of a journalist is in restrictions to what you can report on. In my case, obviously, I was arrested when I was doing an interview in Cairo and then threatened with military trial and deported. And the regime claimed that I didn't have press accreditation, which is an arguable point because they keep it very grey at the beginning of the year. So I was told that I was accredited, but later told I wasn't. And actually, they did accredit me for the presidential elections, which took place in March. So the problems in terms of what you're facing in Egypt is just sort of the closing of freedoms and the sort of anger from the government about what you're writing about and the sort of crackdown in that regard. In terms of countries like Libya, the threat's more obvious in the sense that you're dealing with a sort of armed conflict zone, so you can face threats from things like, obviously different warring militias, also from Islamic jihadists, depending on where you are in the country, and also from anger from the different warring governments that are operating in Libya. In Gaza, it was in the last two Gaza wars, so that's obviously a very active war zone, so you're facing the threat of basically gunfire and airstrikes and shelling and whatever it is. I think the biggest thing is really just to keep doing your journalism, but to be as objective as possible. So if you're operating in a country like Egypt, it's important to give the authorities the opportunity to respond to any accusations that you give to them. I do believe that journalists should be accredited and follow the rules as far as they possibly can, so that you are operating in a way that is safe. I think you also have to be very careful about the people that you work with. So obviously there are threats that foreign correspondents face, but we do have a passport usually that protects us, and the people on the ground that we're working with, whether that's sources or assistants or fixers, although I don't like that term, they will face a much tougher repercussions for what they do than you will. So you've got to be responsible when you're writing stories in terms of how you quote people and how you treat your sources and how you treat your news assistants to make sure that they're safe. In terms of countries like Libya, where you're dealing with this sort of nightmare world where there isn't a clear government and there are sort of rampaging militias fighting each other, and also the threat of jihadis and the attacks that they want to have on foreigners. It's about being savvy and keeping a low profile and being sort of intelligent with the way that you try and conduct your journalism. So you've got to risk assess all the time. You just have to manage your fear and think very clearly and have your strategies in place, have your equipment, whether that's bulletproof vests or a bulletproof hat, or whether that's a satellite phone so that you can contact your office. You have security protocols in place, so the office checks in with you at particular times in the day. And also just researching the country you're working in, really getting to know the country, that means also knowing what NGOs are operating in the country who can help you, but just really doing your background research and trying to tell the story in the most safe and fair way possible.